I'll also be able to see comments and everything as well. So what's going on, everybody? My name is Eric Matta from Substance Abuse Prevention Institute, back at it again with our live weekly video podcast. I've got a very special guest with me today, Alex from AMPM Employment here in Springfield, Ohio. We're going to be talking about a very important topic today of employment, and more specifically, how anyone who has struggled with substance abuse, addiction, or an OVI criminal charge, what can you do, or how can you help somebody prepare to get that person back into the workforce? So Alex, thank you for joining us today, my man. I'm glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, man. So I'm born and raised here in Springfield and Clark County, and have been in the employment arena and the staffing arena for the past 8.5 years. So,
8.5 years, that's a long time.
It is a long time. So it's been pretty interesting, right? Because when we started things out, the economy was a little different, right? We were in a recession, and there weren't a whole lot of jobs to go around.
So 8.5 years, it's 2000. So we're talking 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
a long time. So you've seen a lot of ups and downs in the workplace then, right?
Absolutely. And where we stand today, where employment is the lowest it's been in almost 50 years, I believe.
That's crazy.
So the jobs are there for sure, So now there's a couple other challenges, right? Yeah.
So unemployment's as low as it's been in almost 50 years?
In 50 years, yeah.
Why does it not feel like it?
Well, that's a good question.
That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
And maybe that's my perspective from the world that I live in and the people I interact with, but for some reason it just doesn't feel like it.
Well, I think you can drive around pretty much anywhere now and see a now hiring sign. Right?
Everywhere.
Whether it's a fast food facility or whether it's a manufacturing environment, really anywhere you'll see a now hiring sign. So it's definitely out there. Maybe it gets a little lost in the noise now, right? Because there's so many of them. So it's a very interesting market for sure.
Absolutely.
And employers are looking for all kinds of different ways with the talent shortage right now.
Yep.
I mean, we're in a very interesting generational shift, right? So
absolutely.
I think there's about 10,000 folks every day that are exiting the workforce.
As in retiring?
Whether health related or just retiring in general. So the baby boomers would be that generation.
Yeah.
And so next year, millennials actually will be, I believe, 60 to 70% of the entire working population in the United States. So very interesting changing of the guard. Of course, a lot of different perspectives and the way perhaps the outlook of life and jobs and things like that.
Absolutely. So, lots of change coming then, huh?
Lots of change, yeah.
Okay, so you've been in this space for 8.5 years. Tell us a little bit about AMPM Employment. How long have you been with them? Is it a local company? Are you guys in the state? Tell us about it.
Yeah. So AMPM Employment started actually right here in Springfield. We started with just helping out one company and one person with one position, and it really grew from there. I mean, again, we were in a recession, and the challenge at the time was, folks with doctorate degrees, and bachelor's degrees, associates at all levels, were all competing for the same, to be honest, entry-level positions at that point. Yep. And it was a very sad time. Many people, I also have a background in real estate, right? And that's really where I started before I came into the employment side of things. And many folks, many family friends, and I'm sure many folks that lost their homes and had to rebuild. And it was a very sad time, looking back. So again, AMPM grew from there. We still, the heart of us are here in Clark County, but we've expanded that now to the entire Miami Valley. We have offices in several locations throughout the Miami Valley, stretching down to northern Cincinnati, bordering Indiana, all the way up to Auglaize County, and on the outskirts of Columbus now.
Stretching all the way out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've got a good staffing network, and we're always constantly promoting the jobs and trying to connect people with full-time employment. So. Yeah. I hate that word temporary, right? Because unless it's a seasonal project, we're really not in that business of temporary employment. We're trying to find folks gainful employment after 90 days, coming on full time, and enjoying the benefits of the organization, the healthcare benefits, the retirement programs, and all of those great things that come along with that. So
absolutely, man. Good jobs are hard to come by.
They are. And it's really interesting. But the generation currently and who's looking for jobs, I think is the interesting perspective, right? There's a different demand. A lot of folks are looking for more flex time and absolutely. A lot of different other things in the
everybody wants to work from home now.
Yeah, everybody wants to work from home. And I'll tell you, one of our employers, especially, I'll give a shout out to Assurant, has done a great job in trying to meet employees where they are and what those that mindset or that ideal workspace may be.
Absolutely, man. Good stuff. So I'm glad to hear that workforce workforce is or unemployment's at all-time low. That's good to hear.
That's correct.
Learned that today.
Yeah.
So what I want to specifically talk about today, so in the work that I do and in the work that I've been doing for 8 or 9 years myself, has a lot to do with helping people who are either early in recovery or somebody who has a charge on their record, or maybe somebody who has worked at a job for a long time and then got a charge on their record, like an OVI, and then lost their job. And then now they're at this space where some people don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Some people don't even have a resume, haven't written a resume in years. Some people have no transferable skills. For example, right, at OVI class, a lot of times, not a lot, but I've seen several guys who are CDL truck drivers.
Yeah.
And I know there's one story always sticks with me. I met this guy, and he was a truck driver for 15 years. Had a mortgage, had a family, cars. I mean, everything. He was living the dream, right? And he blew like a barely over the legal limit, which is an OVI.
Yeah.
Right. So when he got charged with OVI and convicted of OVI, he lost his job, right?
Yeah.
Which lost his income, lost his ability to pay his bills. His employer told him, well, we're sorry, we got to let you go, but that's policy. But one thing we can do for you is after you get your license back, we can give you your job back, but you'll have to start in at that entry level pay and you lose all that 15 years of seniority. And this dude, I haven't seen him in months, but last time I saw him, he was still unemployed.
Yeah.
And it was just a downward path from there. So with somebody like that in mind, or somebody coming out of jail, or somebody coming out of a treatment center who is at the ground level, right? What are some things that those folks can do to get themselves back into the workforce and to have to develop a vision of growth?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question, but it's but that's all right, because we see this all the time. So according to the Society of Human Resource Management, so I'm the president of the Springfield Human Resources Management Association.
Awesome.
And it's a continuing conversation that we're always having about workforce, and employers are very they understand that this is a reality that's going on around us. In fact, according to the Society of Human Resource Management, 1 in 3 people in the population of the United States in the workforce, 1 in 3 have a criminal record.
I believe it.
And so it is a very real reality. But I would say the number one thing is to simply not lose hope, right? We are in great economic conditions right now, and there are a lot of jobs. In that unique scenario, though, when it comes to driving and those, there's a lot of regulation. And we want to keep the roads safe, of course, especially as it relates to freight handling and those kind of things. But number one is not to lose hope, and to reach out and know that this is something that you have to be accountable for, and figuring out where to start again and owning that.
Yep.
But the biggest thing that I would encourage people to do is to be forthcoming. And to share those things with the employer. You would be amazed on how many folks, just out of honesty, and talking about those things, it makes such a big difference, right? But we find it so often that some folks, think it would discredit them from getting certain positions, and maybe falsifying applications and stating that maybe there wasn't a background when there is. I mean, folks, you're going to find those things out, right? So being forthcoming on those things is really important. But and communicating with the employer, and going directly to the HR managers, it's a really important piece. But you can't lose hope. You got to figure out how to kind of get back up on your feet. But I think that's it. That's the starting point.
So let me ask you this, and I'm not like any type of law expert when it comes to employment. There may not even be employment, maybe there is, but is there a law that says somebody has to disclose a criminal charge that has been dismissed? Let's say somebody was charged with OVI in 2017, the charge was dismissed, and they go in and they apply for a job somewhere, and the question says, have you been convicted of a crime? And they say no. Tell me about that.
So that's an interesting question. I'm not an attorney either, but these things do come up, and so we have to consult sometimes. But if the record's been expunged, or if it's no longer on there, and that's really a personal decision on what you're going to do. But if you had been charged with a crime, and I was asking you specifically, but more importantly, there has been legislation passed where it's called remove the box, right?
Right.
So
ban the box.
Ban the box. Yeah. There you go. But employers aren't even allowed to ask that question, right?
Wow. Okay.
So it's really up to the employee at that.
I'm not allowed to ask it on an application or during an interview.
That's correct. On an application, you're not allowed to ask those questions. Yeah.
In Ohio, is that an Ohio thing, or is that?
I don't know if that's I believe it's more of a national push right now.
Wow.
I do not believe, it's just an Ohio thing, but, we live in interesting times. I got an HR magazine the other day. I was talking with the Clark State students, and of course, the main thing on the page was a marijuana leaf, right?
Yeah.
And that's been a big topic for folks as well. So we're in an interesting time for that, for sure. But it's again, things are kind of moving, and it's going to be interesting to see where some of these things go.
Okay.
We're looking at things from a health related perspective, and so on the background piece of things, though, it's important to have a conversation, though, and to be honest, because employers do run background checks, and these things do come up. And even if they've been expunged, sometimes they still will come through on the system.
Wow.
So just having a conversation is where it all starts. That's the biggest thing that we talk about. So interestingly enough, in Clark County alone, one of the things that Society of Human Resource Management, the Springfield chapter, what we did, so we brought in the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation Services earlier this year. I think it was our January meeting to kick off the year. But we were talking with folks and realizing that there's 500 people about to reintegrate into our community here in Clark County alone. 500 folks.
Is that 500 a year, or is that?
Well, that's the current number this coming year that will be reintegrating.
Okay.
So what we're doing from a national level as well is we're trying to figure out what we can do to make our community safer, but also to help rehabilitate, because statistics show us that within a threshold of time, if folks aren't able to find gainful employment, the likelihood of them repeating offenses or maybe going back on some type of substance is very, very high. And so what can we do? We owe it to those members who have done their time and who have come out to be viable members of our society.
Right.
I work with a lot of companies. That's one of the things that I do often is I'm working with employers and championing these things. And we tend to find that, when given an opportunity, they happen to be some of the best workers, and just blow things out of the water,
Absolutely.
and happy for those opportunities. So
Absolutely.
I'm seeing the perspective change from where we started 8 years ago or so to where we are now. And it's two things. I think that folks are realizing, we're hit very hard here in Clark County with the opioid epidemic, and it affected so many lives all across all kinds of socioeconomic statuses. But that is a real reality, right? And we owe it to folks who are getting back up on their feet to try and help them find gainful employment, rebuild their lives. And I'm very happy that employers are open to these ideas.
Yep.
And because unemployment is so low, also this is one of the largest untapped workforces in the
Absolutely.
United States.
I agree 100%.
And so if these companies are growing, and if they want to hit their production numbers and really continue to thrive, they need to diversify their workforce and really look at these things. So it's interesting, whether they're being forced to or not, because of the lack of talent within their organizations or the pool. So there's a lot of different variables that go in there, but it's in the right direction, in my opinion.
What you said there, being the untapped workforce, at least a potential right there, know, and it's like, so I work with a lot of men and women who come out of treatment or come out of jail, and it's like seeing somebody who's been addicted to drugs for a long time, who finally gets clean, finally gets sober, finally gets their life back on track. Usually they're pretty capable of going right back to work. Their brain's functioning well. They're able to listen and show up and, do the right thing. The problem that they face is, of course, the honesty piece. It's,
Sure.
For an addict or for somebody who has had something on their record, it's almost a natural instinct to lie. It's like, have you been convicted of a charge? No. Knowing that they have, so I do a lot of the work that I do is just, like you said, helping somebody to be honest, when you're, living in an addicted life or, living in the streets or whatever, like lying is that manipulation is everything. Manipulation is how we get what we want. So we think that once we get back, we get clean, we think, oh, well, maybe they won't know I got caught receiving stolen property a year ago. And it's like, and then they'll get, and I know it comes down to the policies, but, I'm thinking of a guy in particular right now. He's almost been like banned from different agencies.
Well, And it goes back to that honesty piece. You know, I think it's important to remember, you know, I talk about putting the human back in human resources. You know, it's important to know that it is a resource, you know, and these folks do, although there are policies, you know, these folks have hearts, and they oftentimes have family members and all kinds of different folks that have been affected that they know. And so that important piece of being honest in the conversation, it starts you off on the right foot from the get-go. And I know that's a very difficult thing to do. But starting out on the right foot by doing that is, I think, is so powerful. And it allows you to be in control of what happens next to some extent, you know.
So let me ask you this, switching gears a little bit. So I know, so a lot of work that you do is with people trying to help them get jobs.
Yes.
Right? That's one half of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
Another probably bigger piece to the puzzle is working with employers. And so if an employer reaches out to you and they say, Alex, we're hiring at the first of the year, we need 50 people. Right? Does that happen?
Oh yeah, it happens. I was just with an employer. I was just an employer a little south of South Dayton. Very large employer. They won one of the Ohio Best Employer in the magazine there, and they are down 62 positions.
Wow,
62 positions. So the labor market right now, again, with unemployment being so low, we have a mass exiting of a workforce. Right here in Clark County alone, 50% of our entire population are over the age of 50. So it's very interesting, right? And employers are looking at what the talent pools look like and how they're going to grow and strategically compete in this market. But that happens to work well for the employee, right? Because we're looking at more progressive policies related to backgrounds, related to, you know, one of the things AMPM Employment is doing right now is we just launched a bilingual program for our Spanish-speaking community. And it's been very well received. But I was really dumbfounded and saddened by the lack of resources for our Spanish-speaking population. But employers are very open to it, and we're working a lot of different angles that are a little bit more non-traditional and trying to be proactive on those things and helping our community, because our community is very diverse in all different facets to help them find gainful employment. But that's very common. I mean, it's very common for an organization, especially large manufacturing facilities, to be sitting 14, 15 positions down depending on the size of the organization. But that goes into really a drive for the employer, right? They're looking at their neighbor and thinking, okay, what is my neighbor paying? You know, and should I bump this wage? So that is a thing that I'm loving at the moment, because we're seeing the wages slowly come up, which is another big piece that we desperately need. And
so when they say, all right, Alex, we need 50 people, do they give you like a criteria they want to hit? So like, and I would assume that each employer has different policies or procedures or regulations that they're under. So if an employer says, and I've even heard employers say this before, we need people with 2 feet and a heartbeat. I've heard them say that to me before. Like, that's how desperate they are for workers, you know, and I get it, you know, sometimes that's how it is, you know, but for more of a higher functioning, higher paying job, and let's say they reach out to you and say, Alex, we need 50 people. Do they give you like a list of criteria that these folks have to meet? How's that work?
Yeah, so it really just depends on the skill level of the job, right? It also depends on, for example, we work with many customers or many employers that might operate on a government contract. And so they are held to a certain standard by the government on which the stipulations that they need to meet in order to be employed or to work on specific items. But they'll give a list of criteria on things. But the great thing is that we're seeing many employers that are looking on things at a case-by-case basis and taking a deeper dive into things. And so through conversation, like anything, right, is how we're bringing these things up and bringing it to the forefront.
Absolutely.
And trying to navigate through and looking at policies that can be changed, right, that are maybe a little behind in the times and just really not realistic to what our workforce looks like today. So those policies have to be changed, like anything in life, right? We have to adapt and we have to keep going. And so that I'm encouraged by that, though. I mean, I think that's a great thing. The conversation is moving forward, and we're seeing companies change policies to meet their workforce where they are. But it's a good thing, and I think that employees and people, all of us, right? We need to realize what our worth is and our value.
Absolutely.
You know, and our value. And I think you need to. It's hard too when you've suffered from addiction or have gone through that to remind yourself what your value is, you know. But you bring a lot to the table for these organizations, and I think with this market the way it is, you know, what can the employer do for you as well as what can you do for the, you know that you're ready to work and you're ready to go, but what is that employer going to offer you? What do those benefits look like? What does my succession plan look like? You know, I want to grow within the organization, or you know, maybe I'm just looking to get back up on my feet. So yeah, I think that employees, all of us as people, we need to realize that we're in demand, right? And it's very important. Automation is one small piece. I know everybody talks about automation, but those machines also go down, and somebody's got to be there to fix those things as well. So I mean, but one piece that I think that we really lack, and that we really need to look at, and that the employers talk to me most about right now, is transportation.
Absolutely.
You know, so in the Springfield Human Resources Management Association, one of the things that we talk about is we have the jobs, right? Whether you're in Clark County, Champaign, Montgomery, wherever you are, we have some of the jobs. But what the struggle right now is folks, especially on second and third shift, having reliable transportation, especially if you have gone through, you know, an OVI or had your license revoked. You have to find a way to get to and from, you know, and that becomes very difficult.
And even harder than that is a lot of the jobs are right outside of the city, you know, or maybe 2, 3, 4 miles. You know, so transportation is a big deal.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. Second and third shift, and the employers know it. And I hope that, you know, in the next year or so, we can put more pressure and get some things done with that. It's extremely important. And I think, you know, as we're talking about this too, you know, the Department of Jobs and Family Services, you know, a large portion of our population receives some type of assistance programs and different things. And a lot of these folks want to self-sustain and maybe move away and gravitate off of the different assistance programs, but it's very difficult when you can't get to and from work. You know, so I hope that we can see that move forward.
Start here in Springfield, huh?
Start here in Clark County.
That's right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this: what does the workforce look like in your predictions 5 to 10 years from now?
Oh, well, that's far out, but what it looks like, I think, is, again, we already see this mass exiting of our workforce, right? 10,000 a day. So what I see is just like anything, as generations move in and take over, you know, as kind of a majority of folks, right? Next year, the biggest voting bloc, the largest in the workforce, and employers are realizing. I was just in DC 2 weeks ago with 900 other HR professionals throughout the United States, and they're talking about what we can do to adapt and change. But we're also seeing some of these folks take leadership roles within the organization, and I think that they are learning a lot from their counterparts, but they also are driving culture. And they're driving different things and realizing what adjustments can be made based on the demand of the workforce and the generations that are taking over right now. So,
what type of jobs are going to be the most in demand in 5 years?
Well, certainly healthcare.
Really?
Healthcare is going to be the biggest because we have to realize that, you know, with the baby boomer generation, we have an aging population, and somebody's got to be there to take care of these folks. So whether, you know, and unfortunately, I know many of us have been affected by, I know my grandmother has dementia, and that's been very difficult, but, you know, God bless the people that are there in facilities or are being able to take care of them. But I think I saw a statistic the other day where 40 million Americans are working full-time as full-time home healthcare people in addition to working full-time work. So by far, I definitely think it's going to be in the healthcare field, but there's still going to be jobs. You know, Amazon has a new 1 million square foot facility over in West Jefferson, Ohio. So those jobs will still be here. You have Topre and different others that have moved into Springfield, into Clark County, which we welcome. But I hope that we see even more folks. I would love to see here in Clark County more IT jobs, more finance jobs, more creative type of jobs where people can utilize that skills, because for so long we were known really from a manufacturing standpoint, which is a great thing. My grandfather worked at International Harvester for 37 years, came home and farmed, and so did his dad. But, you know, this generation sometimes has a different mindset on what they want to do. And so I hope that we can bring some of those jobs, especially here to Clark County, because it's very important, right? We want our young people to stay here and to thrive and to realize that you can live a great quality of life here and to be a part of something big that we're building, you know? So that's where I see it. But healthcare for sure is going to be the biggest.
Good deal.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. You know?
Yeah, you know, one thing I always try to do, you know, working with folks who, you know, are struggling getting a job,
Yeah.
you know, and they think, oh, I don't want to start a job making $10 or $11 an hour. I'm worth more than that, or I deserve more than that. You know, and a state of mind I try to get somebody to be in is rather than looking at the short term, like right now, try to play the long game a little bit, you know, and that's why I asked what would be in demand in 5 years, because if somebody in my own situation, when I first got in recovery, I had a felony on my record. I had several misdemeanor charges on my record. Got told no from every employer I tried to get a job from. But, you know, after 7, 8, 9 years later, a little bit of education, lots of good references.
Yeah.
The employment game looked completely different for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm convinced, like I have the belief now that if I really wanted to try to get a job almost anywhere, I feel like I could, because of the skills and the mindset and the relationships I've developed along the way. So I always try to get to folks to, you know, think a little bit differently about the employment game. Yeah, if you just got caught stealing last year, your chances of getting a good job may be pretty thin. But if you do the right thing and you stay clean and you do everything you got to do and you get your license back and you get a car and you have a safe place to live and you're wise with your money and you build relationships, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, your entire world could change.
Absolutely.
You know?
We have great organizations here in Clark County, like Friends and Families of Addicts.
Yeah.
And a lot of other organizations, but exactly, you know, the whole world could change. But the reality of the situation is, I'll go back to this, that so many of us have been affected by, for example, the opioid crisis and just, well, maybe alcohol, things in general, right? And so I think that folks are realistic to those things, right? And I go back to kind of putting that human back into the human resources part of it, but and understanding your worth. But you're right. You know, coming and trying to do that, it can be an intimidating thing. Pulling up to a large facility, and you know, you get all those feels, you know. But it's important to, again, I'm going to go back to, it's important to know your worth and to keep trying and not to lose hope, and to reach out, have a support group. You know, I think what you're doing is great, and you know, we talked about this a little bit as well, and I specifically for men, you know, and mental health and talking through those things. You know, oftentimes we're seeing people, when you talk about those wages, that are having to work 2 and 3 different jobs, and the fact that, you know, maybe a spouse or partner has to be home because of the cost of healthcare, or not healthcare, excuse me, childcare. You know, so the good news is we're seeing those wages starting to climb as the employers are starting to compete over the workforce and the labor market and the talent that's in our community, which I think is a great thing, right? When wages continue to climb. So it's going to be interesting over the next couple of years, because the market's only getting tighter. And so they're going to have to do something to compete. And it's a good thing for the employees, right? It's a good thing for all of us to see those wages continue to climb. So
you leave me feeling hopeful, Alex. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I
That's
sure
good
hope
stuff,
so.
man.
Yeah,
so
good things on the horizon.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. We got Danny on here, says it's difficult to find employment with certain charges. Yes, sir, you are absolutely correct. That is a fact of life right there. So we've been on for 27 minutes, Alex. I think that you definitely gave us some good tips. Honesty, right? Yeah, man. Building honesty and just being able to be upfront with somebody. I mean, that's everything.
Absolutely. And stay encouraged, but be persistent. You know, I think the other thing that we kind of fall into is everything's so digital, right? We do everything online, or, you know, Indeeds and all these other things, but I don't necessarily know if we call it old school, but, you know, taking that resume, and if you need help with the resume, again, the Department of Jobs and Family Services is a resource there, but come out and see us at AMPM Employment. We'll help you create a resume. If we're not able to help you find work, at least you have that tool, and take it with you, and, you know, write a list, or we'll even give you a list of places that you may want to work that you have interest in, and take it to them. You know what I mean? Drop off that resume, you know, call on that person, try to shake their hand. I mean, you can't beat that. You
Absolutely.
know? And the respect that comes with that is pretty powerful.
How old are you?
29.
You got a bright
like
future
50,
ahead of you, my
right?
man. You're very smart. You're intelligent. You're passionate. You got a bright future ahead of you, my man.
Thank you for all you do for our community.
I appreciate it, man. I'm anxious to see you grow, and you already know if there's ever anything I can do to help, I'm here for you. You have I judge people by their heart, not by what I see on Facebook or, you know, anything
Amen
like
to
that.
that,
And
right.
it's hard to really get to know somebody, but I can tell just by the short time we've known each other, you're a good dude. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your
you, man. Yeah.
your passion for Springfield. So if anybody in Springfield, Clark County, surrounding counties looking for a job, reach out to Alex, AMPM Employment. Where are you guys located?
1533 Moorfield Road. But check out our website, ampmemployment.com, and you'll see where we're located all over the Miami Valley. And absolutely, anything we can do to help you get in the right direction or get you closer to a career field that you want to be in, we'll get you there.
Good deal. So everybody, thank you for watching. I'm going to definitely tag Alex in the comments below. So if you have any questions for him, reach out. And thanks again for watching. We will see you next week. Have a good night.
Thanks.